Grenfell Tower started as a post-war answer to a simple problem: how to house many families on limited land. Its design followed the thinking of the time. A high-rise could be safe if it was divided into strong, separate boxes. Each flat acted like its own fire-resistant compartment. If a fire started, it was expected to stay inside that one home long enough for help to arrive. That expectation shaped everything. The walls, floors and doors were meant to slow heat and smoke, and to stop flames moving from one flat to the next. Stairs and lobbies were treated as protected routes, not places for fire to reach quickly. The safety plan depended less on sprinklers and more on separation. The building did not need to fight fire everywhere as long as it could hold it in one place. So the original promise of the tower was containment. A single flat fire should have stayed a single flat fire. That was the assumption behind emergency planning and day-to-day management, and it shaped how risk was understood for decades. When that compartment system worked, it bought time. When it failed, the whole logic of living safely in a high-rise failed with it. In the early 2010s, a decision took shape. Grenfell Tower needed a major refurbishment. The reasons sounded practical: repairs, upgrades, a better exterior, lower running costs. Plans moved from discussion to approval. But the project ran into a hard limit straight away: money. Budgets tightened, figures got revisited, and the question shifted from what was ideal to what was affordable. Cost pressure began to steer the work in quiet but decisive ways. The outside of the building became a major focus because it offered visible change and promised better energy performance. Insulation mattered too because it meant warmer homes and lower bills. Yet every improvement carried a price tag. Contractors priced options, managers compared totals, and choices narrowed toward materials and systems that met targets on paper. As budgets tightened, the refurbishment became a balancing act with consequences. The approved scheme aimed to deliver multiple goals at once: new facade, improved insulation, and an updated appearance without breaking the bank. That pushed decision-makers towards specific exterior packages and specific insulation approaches that fitted the cost envelope. It sounded like value for money. It also locked in the basic direction of the tower's new skin. The refurbishment moved from drawings to purchasing. The exterior was treated as a major opportunity, a new skin that promised a cleaner look and better energy performance. Panels were chosen that used aluminium sheets with a plastic-filled core, and behind them sat insulation that could burn. These were not small add-ons. They became a new outer layer wrapped around the tower, changing what the outside of the building could do in a fire. Step by step, installers fixed rails to the old concrete and built a cavity between the new panels and the tower's original wall. That air gap helped keep moisture away and improved thermal performance, but it also created a space where heat and flames could move fast. Details around windows and edges were altered to fit the new system. Each cut, each joint, each corner became another place where fire could find a route. When it was finished, the tower no longer faced the outside world as bare concrete. It carried a layered facade: panel, cavity, insulation, then the original structure. If a fire ever escaped a flat and reached that outer package, it met materials that could feed it and a hidden channel that could pull it upward. A vertical pathway for rapid external spread had been built in. It had not existed before. During the refurbishment, the people who lived in the tower started reporting problems that felt immediate and practical. They flagged disruptions to basic safety features, questions about materials, and worries about how changes might behave in a fire. These were not abstract complaints. They were repeated, documented concerns about risk. At the same time, professionals involved on site also noticed issues that should have slowed the process down. But the response stayed small. Warnings got treated like customer service matters, not safety signals. Reports got answered with reassurance, delay, or narrow fixes that kept the wider project moving. The pattern mattered. Each time a concern was reduced to a minor snag, it set a new normal. Problems could be raised, logged, and then managed away. The work carried on under the assumption that nothing fundamental needed to change. After the works, the concerns did not stop. Residents kept pushing, pointing to fire safety as an ongoing issue, not something solved by a finished contract. Yet the same dynamic continued. Questions met with minimal action and unease treated as overreaction. No decisive intervention followed, no hard pause that forced a full recheck of what had been installed. The result was simple and brutal. Warnings accumulated and risk stayed in place. After the refurbishment, a simple question mattered. Did the new outer system meet the rules? On paper, it often did. The standards leaned on small tests and narrow definitions, not on how a full tower behaved in a real fire. Guidance left room for interpretation, and that space got used. A risky combination could be presented as acceptable because the paperwork matched the wording. Oversight also broke into pieces. Different parts of the facade could be assessed separately, as if insulation, panels, barriers, and fixings never interacted. The approvals process relied on documents, certificates, and sign-offs that looked official even when they described a different setup than what ended up on the wall. Responsibility blurred between designers, contractors, inspectors, and suppliers. When everyone owned a slice, no one owned the outcome. That gap between what was installed and what was truly safe stayed hidden behind compliance language. A system could pass because it resembled something tested, not because it was proven under the same conditions. Warnings did not automatically trigger a halt, and failures did not automatically pointed to a single accountable party. The building got treated as meeting requirements, while its real-world risk quietly rose. The rules did not catch up in time. Late on the 14th of June 2017, a fire started inside a flat in Grenfell Tower. At first, it fitted a pattern firefighters and residents thought they understood, a domestic blaze limited to one home. Within minutes, the first emergency calls reached the control room, reported as a flat on fire in a high-rise. Help was sent. The assumption underneath it all was simple. The building's internal fire separation should have held. That early expectation shaped the first moments. In towers like this, each flat was meant to act like a box, designed to slow fire and smoke long enough for crews to arrive and deal with it. So the initial incident was treated as manageable. Contain, attack, rescue if needed. The logic was familiar and it was widely relied on. A single flat fire was serious, but it was not supposed to become everyone's emergency. As calls continued, the same core belief stayed in place. Compartmentation would buy time, limit spread, and keep escape routes usable. That belief mattered because it set expectations for residents and responders alike. The incident began with the kinds of decisions made every day in London, dispatching appliances, gathering details, moving toward the address. Nothing in those first minutes announced a catastrophe. The building was expected to perform as designed. Then the fire stopped behaving like a typical flat fire. Flames reached a window opening and pushed out into the open air. Outside, they met the new facade system. What should have been a dead end became a new route. Heat and burning debris rose and caught on the cladding and insulation. In seconds, fire latched onto the building's skin and started climbing. Once it took hold, it moved fast. Because it did not need to burn through walls or doors. It travelled up the outer face, fed by combustible layers and gaps that acted like channels. Each floor it reached created another point where heat could attack windows and frames. Fire re-entered higher flats, not through corridors, but from the outside. Containment broke, floor by floor. That shift changed everything about the incident's scale. A fire that started in one home spread vertically like a fuse on the side of the tower. The facade became an engine, pulling flames upward and spreading them laterally around corners. Multiple flats ignited in quick succession. The building no longer faced a single compartment fire. It faced a whole building fire, developing faster than anyone expected. As the flames climbed the outside, the response inside the building still ran on rules built for a very different kind of fire. Firefighters expected the blaze to stay within one flat, and the standard advice reflected that. But now the fire behaved like it had found a shortcut around every barrier. Calls surged in at once, reports conflicted, and the picture from the ground never matched what residents described from above. The incident stopped making simple sense. That confusion fed directly into life or death decisions. Some people were told to remain where they were, believing their homes would hold back smoke and heat. Others tried to leave and met stairwells that became harder to use with each passing minute. The more the exterior burned, the more it pushed smoke into new areas, changing conditions faster than instructions could keep up. Communication lines strained, and updates reached people too late or not at all. Inside, the building's systems did not provide the clear separation everyone depended on. Smoke spread beyond a single floor, doors and corridors became dangerous, and escape routes started to fail as safe passages turned into traps. Fire crews faced an impossible trade-off. Keep climbing to reach those calling from higher levels, or pull back as heat and smoke cut off access behind them. Minute by minute, the gap widened between planned strategy and the reality of the fire. When the flames finally died back, the disaster did not end. It widened. Families searched for names, and a country watched the numbers rise. Public mourning spread beyond the local streets and into national life because the loss felt preventable. Questions formed quickly and stayed sharp. How did a home become a trap? And how did so many warning signs lead to so little change? Survivors began to speak, first to officials, then to the wider public. Their accounts described confusion, delays, and decisions made under extreme pressure. Those stories did something crucial. They turned the fire from a single shocking event into a chain of moments that could be examined. Each testimony added a piece. What people were told, what they believed, and what happened next no longer matched. Investigations started to trace that chain backward. An inquiry gathered evidence, experts tested materials, and investigators pulled records from contractors, managers, and regulators. They did not look for one simple mistake. They mapped how choices lined up, how checks failed, and how responsibility slipped between systems. The focus shifted from the fire itself to the conditions that made it spread and the decisions that let it. Years later, the story had not ended with reports and apologies. Court cases moved through the system, and criminal investigations stayed open, testing whether decisions made on paper carried personal responsibility. Regulators rewrote guidance, tightened testing, and pushed for clearer lines of accountability. But time worked slowly. Every new rule had to pass into practice, and every delay left people living with the consequences. Across the country, surveys found similar cladding and insulation systems on other buildings, and the problem expanded from one tower to a national backlog. Remediation programs started, then ran into arguments over who paid, what had to be removed, and how quickly work could be done. Some blocks received scaffolding and new plans. Others received letters, higher insurance, and years of waiting. Safety felt conditional. This reality stood in sharp contrast to the earlier belief that a high-rise like Grenfell operated like a set of sealed boxes, and that a fire stayed inside one flat. That assumption had once shaped everyday life, building approvals, and emergency planning. Now it had been replaced by uncertainty and scrutiny. Buildings that looked normal required proof. Until walls were opened, materials identified, and systems replaced, risk remained present.